Hello, hello, and I'm going to promote you to panelist. Welcome, welcome. We'll have our speaker joining soon. They're here, they're here. Hello, hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Doing well. Doing very well. Zontee?
Zontee, yes.
Zontee, cool. Cool. We're going to get started here in like 10 minutes. Ross will be joining as well. Just how are you doing today?
Oh, pretty well. It's getting a little bit gray here in New York, but otherwise, okay.
Yeah. Is it hot up there? I just moved to DC from San Francisco.
Yeah, we had a couple of really warm days, but then the temperature dropped again, and
Yeah.
I will admit that I haven't been outside of my house for the last couple of days, so I don't know. But it seems okay. It seems like normal June weather.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the sun to come out again. Nice and warm.
How are you liking DC so far?
I love it. I used to live here like 10 years ago. I have 2 kids, and we had a small, like 900 square foot, 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. And it was just like 2 kids, and we're both working from home. It was a lot of action.
Yeah.
And so we were like, let's hit the eject button. We were thinking about coming back east. I got family back here and stuff like that. So, for the kids and stuff, but I love it. It's beautiful.
I think it's changed a lot in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
DC has gotten very built up in terms of restaurant culture, bars, cool places to go. It's very nice.
Can I tell you a secret?
Hmm.
I think the restaurants in DC are better than San Francisco.
Really? That's shocking. Don't tell other people that.
Don't tell other people that. Well, I mean, there's some really, really good restaurants in San Francisco, but if you want to have like a nice meal, like a really nice, like a quality meal, you're talking like probably like $150 to $200 for 2 people and drinks, right? Like you can get like that same quality meal in like at a good restaurant in DC for maybe half the price.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, but that like quality wise, there's a couple places in San Fran, but I like a lot of things in DC. Ross is here.
Hello,
Hey, Ross.
hello. I'm in the middle of nowhere, Connecticut. I like the things that are here. It's called living with your mom and having her cook meals and having her enjoy it because you haven't been home in so long.
I got a question. Did she make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich yet?
No. Why? Is that like a childhood spoof? Like that's all I ate during my childhood. I had
Right.
3 brothers.
I mean, if she did, that would be amazing.
No. Have you seen my shirt?
What, peanut butter and jelly?
Yeah, so in high school, make me a sandwich was like what all of the bad like bully kids would say.
Yeah.
So I put it on a t-shirt, but I just made it look like really nice so that it was just like a nice t-shirt. And whenever anyone said it, like everyone knew that people were making fun of each other, but it was just kind of a joke because all the teachers were like, what? It's just like a common phrase, right? So I thought you were referring to that. I made like $800, which was pretty cool.
Off of t-shirts.
Off of t-shirts in high school.
Very nice.
It's wild.
Yeah, so Zontee, are you moving to the East Coast? You're staying in San Francisco?
Oh, no, I live in New York City.
Oh, okay.
We were talking East Coast versus West Coast.
Gotcha. I always thought I'd move to New York City. It's close. It's huge.
Good place.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff.
Do you ever get overwhelmed?
No, I mean, I'm really a city person. I moved here for undergrad, and I think that as soon as I got here, I was like, yeah, this is exactly where I've always belonged. So I think I like that there's always new experiences, always new restaurants, always new
Yeah.
bars, clubs, shows, comedy. Like that's why I want to live in a city. I feel like it's nice to get away for a weekend where I'm like in the woods and doing nothing, but I wouldn't do it all the time.
I
Right.
completely agree.
Yeah, I like the city just for randomly passing people and random conversation with someone who their life is completely different than yours.
Sure.
Here I go for a run every day and someone's walking down my street and I start talking to them 100 feet before I pass them and I finish talking to them to 100 feet afterwards because I'm so desperate for social interaction. I will talk to anyone.
I hear you. I hear you. That's been the strange thing, right, about being in isolation is like you don't have the normal amount of interpersonal interactions that you would have in your normal life. So it feels like you're right. Anytime you see someone, you're like, oh, this is great. We did our first like social distancing brunch the other day, this past Saturday, where my friends live nearby and they have a backyard. So we we sat like 6 feet apart and we just hung out. And we hung out for like 4 hours because I was like, talking to people face to face is great. I haven't done this in so long.
It's awesome.
For sure. There's something about the being able to have 3 conversations at the same time, interrupt each other, talk over each other, see the entire body language, see them twitching their foot so you want to learn more about that story they don't want to tell you about because you can see that they're uncomfortable. That's just so relaxing.
Yeah, I also think you tend to concentrate more on the people that you're with when you are in person.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that when you're online, there's always some like invisible like ping or text message or whatever. And so even when you're having a conversation with people, you can feel that they're kind of like itching to look at other stuff.
It's the eye connection, right? It's like it's hard to like look into the camera like the whole entire time.
Right. But to me, it's also like it's easier on your brain to be in the room because like Ross, you were saying, it's the body language, it's like being able to bounce off of someone else's energy. It's really hard to do that otherwise. So yeah, it's nice to be able to do the I don't know, in-person thing a little bit. New York, we're supposed to start phase 1 of opening next Monday. So, we'll be able to hopefully go to slightly more stores and things. And I think there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. We've suddenly realized that we should probably get some more board games or something. We're really tired of ours, Mm-hmm.
For sure. It's good to have all those non-essential stores back open. Had to dress up to go to the grocery store just to meet people and impress them. Nowhere else to go. There's a Safeway in San Francisco that's known as the I don't know what the name is, but it's like the marriage Safeway, where people just go and they dress up because it's in a fancy neighborhood and they go buy their groceries and they meet their spouse, whatever. And I've told the story because I think it's funny that that's probably become every single grocery store.
Oh my gosh. I love that that's even a thing. That's really funny.
Yeah.
I definitely do not think that New York has like a special grocery store where you're likely to meet a spouse. I feel like people are normally in and out, like not paying attention to you at all. You are more likely to randomly run into a celebrity than I think get a date in a New York City.
Wow.
Supermarket.
I completely agree with that. Last time I was in New York City, I was walking down the sidewalk and there's 2 photographers standing there. I'm just like, what are you waiting for? We don't know what we're waiting for, but we were told to stand here. And then 5 minutes later, Beyonce walks out of a door and they go, oh, gotta go to work.
Oh, wow.
Taking a bunch of pictures.
That's crazy.
Like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Like,
yeah.
She's just like 5 feet away, but standing between me and her is a 6-foot bodyguard.
Yeah. There you go.
Cool. So Zontee, a couple of little logistics. Media Volery, is that how you say it? Cool.
Yep.
Head of strategy, respected digital consultancy of Convince and Convert.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. And teaching companies how to launch virtual events. Ross, can you do the spiel about we're not going to attack you, we're going to attack the ideas? And
yeah, sure. So the best presentations that we've had, you can have slides, you can not have slides. Just talking head is usually the best because you say whatever ideas are here in this conversation and there's nothing to distract. Also, the attention for a lot of these things is in the tension itself. So if you say something that can be, misinterpreted or misconstrued, or just like there's any other angle that we can go off of, we're not attacking you. We might attack your ideas just to see how other people might think and further the conversation. When you agree with someone the whole time, it's usually just not that interesting. It's like, oh yeah, great idea. Great idea.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for you to ask me to delve deeper into topics. Ross, when you and I originally talked, we discussed just you guys lobbing questions at me, and I'm really happy to engage with that. I taught as a lecturer at City College and at Columbia for many years, so don't worry, you're not going to scare me with questions. So please, by all means. And I think that the topic today has probably changed a little bit even since the last time we spoke, because people are starting to open up, but the timeline for online digital events, et cetera, has probably become longer. So I'm really happy to answer specific questions. And I'm sure you guys will field questions from the audience too. So anything that comes up, feel free to throw them at me.
Perfect. For sure. We're going to be handling the questions from Zoom, from Facebook Live. We'll throw those at you. We'll throw our own questions. And yeah, as things are opening up, maybe the timeline for virtual events is shifting, but I would love anyone else to do what we're doing, which is interview someone every single day. So questions about that. And yeah, I'm sure that we'll be full of them.
Ross, you want to do the intro?
Weren't you just practicing it? I mean, I will.
Oh, I can do it. Yeah, that's right. I got it.
You got
cool.
this.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So Zontee, what I'll do is I'll do an intro and then I'll just hand it over to you, and then it's your show for the next 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll start asking questions and we'll interject here and there.
Sure. When Ross and I spoke originally, I think I said more questions is better. So I don't need to speak that long, feel free to jump in there whenever you guys want.
Perfect.
Yeah. So the other thing I usually find best is just hard stop. Tell us if you talk for 5 minutes, be like, I'm going to talk for 5 minutes. Cool. Done. Questions. When we interject and we're like, we don't know if you're done with your presentation,
sure,
it's a little more awkward. So if you're just like, I'm done, be like, great. And we'll just go for it.
Sure. Okay.
And then we usually hard stop. We'll just like, when all the questions are done, just be like, cool, move on with our day.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Ready. Going live. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to another Masters of Marketing. It is Wednesday, June 2nd or 3rd, 2020. And I'm super excited to have Zontee on the show today. Zontee, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Excellent. Zontee is awesome. She's a digital marketing expert, a founder of a digital marketing agency, Volery. She's also head of strategy for a respected digital consultancy, Convince and Convert. Today, she'll be teaching us about how companies should launch virtual events and that to take the place of physical events. Zontee, I would love to learn about virtual events.
Sounds great. I think that all of us are recognizing that in this time period during this pandemic, we realized that we can't go on as business as usual, but a lot of B2B and B2C companies rely really heavily on physical events, physical meeting experiences to further the things that they want to promote to their audiences, right? So whether you are a perfume company and you do launch parties, or you are a B2B company and you do trade shows where you are connecting with people in person and spending time having those face-to-face conversations, you're probably really struggling of how do I keep my pipeline full? How do I generate leads? How do I generate excitement around whatever it is that I am doing? But there are a lot of different ways that we can pivot into the online space. And the key thing to keep in mind as you think about pivoting to the digital space with events is that it's not a one-to-one transaction. So if you previously were a sponsor of big physical conferences, I speak at many throughout the year, and one of the things that people are saying is, well, you can't get all of those people together, right? Well, there are lots of digital conferences that are happening. I'm actually speaking on Friday this week at Social Fresh X, which is a social media conference that's gone completely online, but the format has really changed. The length of content that you can provide in a digital space, as you guys have found in doing this series, right, is much shorter than you would do in person. In person, yes, you can watch at South by Southwest when I go, you're in a room watching a guy speak for like 45 minutes, and then there's like a really long Q&A, and people are happy about that, right? In the digital space, we all know we don't have that kind of time or energy. We don't have the desire to stick around that long. So when we're thinking about pivoting to online, the first thing that I want you guys to think about is how do we translate the purpose of what it is that we're doing to the digital space without necessarily replicating the format. So it won't necessarily be a big trade show type format. Maybe we're doing a series of webinars. Maybe we're doing a series of roundtables where our experts are doing, you know, almost like a Zoom happy hour, et cetera. Ross, I think you and I talked about the example of one of my clients who's been working with Salesforce, and instead of doing roundtable dinners where they're hosting, you know, a meal in every different city, they're doing these roundtables virtually, and they're using Uber Eats to send food to all of the people who are attending, so that they have the experience of eating together, breaking bread, etc., and getting some of that replication, but that the actual event is different in the sense that whereas they used to need, you know, 20 different experts to be in a room with all of these guests, now they can actually only have 2 or 3 and just have many smaller roundtables. So again, they're changing what the format is to fit the needs, but they're replicating the experience that they want to have and the purpose of that experience. The second thing I want you to think about is how do we take the content that we're sharing and make it more relevant to people in that format? We talked already a little bit about how do we get shorter with the content. I would also say that you need to think through what's the presentation that makes the most sense. A great example of a presenter who does a really good job is my friend Brian Fanzo. So he's realized that instead of just being a talking head with like slides, that's really boring. So he actually has 3D cameras in his office, as well as slides that do physical overlays on his screen. So he's almost like he's running his own CNN Chiron while he's giving his presentation. And that makes it super engaging. So really thinking about what's the format that's going to keep your audience tuning in. And then third of all, think about what's the togetherness that you want to work on, right? So I also work with some small business clients, and in the arts and crafts space, some of them are really great at creating online events that actually replicate that physical experience in the sense that they are doing projects all along. So maybe it's a paint along where they're doing like a lesson every day for a whole week. Maybe it's a knit along where, you know, over the course of 2 months, each section of the pattern is getting released over a 2-week period, and then people are knitting and having conversations online, and then doing video, live video like we're doing right now to keep people engaged in part of that conversation. So pivoting to online events and thinking through how you can serve your audience best, I think is really all about, again, identifying what is the needs, why do you want that togetherness, and how can you create an experience that's different from the physical that's still super engaging. And I think that if you keep those 3 things in mind, you can start to create really fun interactions for your audience. Again, whether it's B2B or B2C, we have a lot of opportunities. And the other thing I think we have to keep in mind is that you've seen that Microsoft, Facebook, all of these organizations have already said that they're not going to do any physical events of 50 or more people through at least June of 2021. So this is going to be our reality for the next couple of months, nearly a year. So if that's the case, we all have to get better at doing digital events and thinking through what that looks like for our organization now, because we can't just keep scrambling. I think in the last couple of months, we've seen a lot of companies scramble and pivot and get good at some of this stuff. But, you know, thinking through sending all the equipment that you need to your teams and doing some serious trainings and really creating that format that speaks to your audience is really important. And I would invest in that now rather than later. So I think those are the couple of points that I wanted to make sure to get across today, but I'd love to take some questions. Ross, Brian, throw them at me.
Sure. So my first question is, you keep talking about doing things that are interactive and highlight a company's, I don't know, whatever they're doing that get people's attention. That's easy with a small group, it seems, if you have one of those Uber Eats dinners and you're talking to people. But as the group gets larger, it seems harder to get people to interact. Do you have examples of companies that have, you know, found an activity that is related to their company or even completely unrelated to just get people's attention and get them interacting?
Sure. So I think that scaling events really depends on, again, what exactly is your goal. So you'll find that there are some webinars, Convince and Convert, we have done several webinars where we have, 500 plus people, and we heavily use polls and engage people in the conversation and ask them to give feedback throughout. And that can be a really easy way to scale. The B2C example that I shared before of the bake along or the knit along or the craft along, all of those actually scale really well. Some of those can have thousands of people participating, and through shared forums where people can post their pictures, post their progress, ask questions, etc., that can be really good. And that's a good example where the asynchronicity of the event is helpful, because, you know, maybe I'm a week behind some of these other people who are in their baking. You know, I've, like many people, I have started a sourdough starter, and, you know, maybe mine isn't as far along as the next person's, but I can see what their progress was like 4 days ago, so then I can get a better sense of, okay, where should I be? So thinking about, can we have some asynchronous components can really help with that scaling as well. And then I think that when you are thinking about some events, now sometimes you really do want to have everybody tuning in at the same time for some reason, but you have to make that reason to tune in really compelling, and then make the chat experience or the participation experience something that people can figure out, right? So from the consumer space, a great example of that is the DJ D-Nice. He's having these huge DJ parties on Instagram where he's just broadcasting from the West Coast, I think 5 p.m. on Wednesdays. And he is just broadcasting music from his kitchen, but thousands of people are tuning in, sharing their commentary. And then he gets other DJs, other musicians involved by featuring them and turning them into the presenters for some of those. And I think that the participation piece of that is really about the togetherness. People starting to become in on the joke. People have started writing bingo cards of all of his little phrases that he uses, because he has sort of a specific way of speaking and his music selection, etc. So it's about becoming part of the in culture for that particular group. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities to find connection.
I think that was a great example of one of the questions that I had, which is like, are you seeing any like cultural changes in the event space that are because things have gone virtual? And I think like your example is great, but have you seen other kind of examples of that where particular like cadences or the way that people talk with each other have changed?
Absolutely. I think that because many of the people that I work are professional speakers or presenters, one of the things that you're seeing is that they're trying to get good at, again, that digital format where you have to be much tighter with your presentations. So again, you cannot have a digital keynote that is an hour long. You can have a digital keynote that's 25 minutes long. And if that's the case, then the speakers have to prepare themselves for that. And then you're also seeing that there are quite a lot of speakers who are specifically getting certified as e-speakers, meaning that they've designed programming that works really well. So in this case today, we're sitting here, I'm sitting at my desk, comfortably resting. But for a lot of the speakers, you're going to find that they're actually thinking, how do I replicate that stage experience from home?
Mm-hmm.
So Salesforce, I'll use them again. They did their recent large conference where they shot it on a stage, but the whole theater was empty because they wanted to replicate that kind of on-stage experience.
Yeah.
That I think can be a very expensive proposition for some organizations. Adobe also had their large event recently, and they did that from home. So it was people presenting from home, but standing in their library or their office or whatever, trying to replicate the dynamism of somebody standing on a stage while being at home. And in all of those cases, I think that there's pros and cons to different presentation modes. It's really about providing your team with the right tools so that they can create that experience, but it still look good, right? Like you don't want to be watching somebody pace around their house and they keep going in and out of camera shot, right? Or for someone to be sitting in their office and they don't sound good. So thanks, Brian. So in those cases, you've got to train your team to know, okay, like we're all going to have ring lights, we're all going to have stands here and there. Somebody's going to come on and do a consultation with you and figure out the best room layout. And that's an investment on businesses' parts, but I think that it's a really worthwhile one, because the other thing is, I believe that even past 2021, God willing, we have a vaccine, we start getting people ready to go out in the world. I think that there are still going to be a lot of events where people will just say it's more cost effective for us to figure out a digital version of it than to do only large scale events.
Yeah. So my challenge to this kind of idea is kind of a question or complaint I have about this, and kind of also us doing our own show. which is really around how do you keep the desire and engagement, or even increase the desire to engage within like a show like this, right? So we've been thinking about our own format of this show and becoming more of like have a topic and more of a panelist. So what are your thoughts on that? Like thumbs up, thumbs down, more panels versus kind of like independent speakers. And then there also feels like a signal to noise problem too, right? So like what our show versus, and there's a couple other people that we found that are actually doing our daily shows as well. Is there a signal to noise problem? Do you see the desire to attend these things increasing, decreasing? And do you think like formats such as like panelists or roundtables might be better formats in this type of kind of virtual event space?
Sure, those are all good questions. I think that in terms of the signal to noise question, I think that desire to participate in these things will ebb and flow. As there are many more events, suddenly people will be like, oh my gosh, there's a webinar every second of my day. I used to register from 3 a week, but now it's just too much, right? And then people will scale back a little bit. So I think some of that is to be expected. But think about it this way. If you can create content, and the way you guys are, where the content is new and engaging each time, and that there's a really expected format, then it becomes more of a ritual for your audience, right? Think about it like watching TV or listening to a podcast. If you do it every day, it feels like something that you definitely want to tune into. Sure, you skip one here and there, but in general, you want to continue to tune in. So I think there's that. And then I think that for some organizations, it will be differentiating between things. Maybe you'll have a more regular short format piece of content that is distributed regularly with a really set schedule. And then you're gonna have these one-off specials that are kind of a big event that feature more people or completely different or unexpected format. And those will be something that is more of a marquee event that people will tune in special for. So I think that that's how you'll create some of that desire. And then when it comes to panels, I would say that the trick is never having the exact same format all the time, right? Sometimes have panels, sometimes have individual speakers, sometimes have, an Ask Me Anything, sometimes have a completely different kind of format, sometimes have, a puppet show. Whatever that thing is, if you continue to switch it up, I think that it also keeps it a little bit more engaging and fresh, because your audience will want to see exactly what comes up around the corner.
I have two questions. The first question I have is, you talk about the style of get together that you want based on, what you want to accomplish. A lot of people have conferences because they're large and they have 50 representatives from their company who can pull people aside who got in for free, who they really just wanted there so that they could, pitch their company, sell their idea. As far as tactical tools and ways to do that, do you see ways that larger audiences or larger events, people have created technology such that you can facilitate continuing to do that and channeling people in to become sales?
For sure. So if you are sponsoring digital conferences, you'll find that many of the platforms, so for instance, I mentioned that I'm going to be in Social Fresh later this week. The platform they're using is called Hopin, and it has a trade show experience so that you can actually go and visit trade booths and speak to a representative from that company right there. So that is a little bit more difficult to scale. As you said, it's not like you have 50 members of your team and there's thousands of people passing through. Even if the event has 1,000 people, maybe they're not all tuned in at the exact same time, right? So I think that is one aspect of it. So if the digital conference has some of that functionality built in. The second piece of it is thinking about that top of funnel content differently. So maybe you would go and send your entire sales team to an event. Now you're going to have to really leverage your content marketing team to create a webinar that attracts 500, 1,000, 2,000 people to that webinar, and then you make a pitch within that. So I would say that, of course, the vast majority of your content should be really valuable to the audience. It should be what they signed up for, but it doesn't mean that you can't have some kind of a sales pitch within it. So I'll give you an example from Sharp Spring, which is an agency SaaS company, and they make a platform for your email automation, marketing automation, etc. And I was recently a guest on one of their webinars where they were really talking more about how can agencies pivot. There were probably 500 different agency people tuned in. But they also talked about the features in their product that allow those agencies to do their work better and to sell different services to their audience. So it's still highly relevant to this audience that wants to make money, right? But they're still talking a little bit about some of the features that they've built into the product, new releases, et cetera, that would be genuinely engaging. And even at that point in the presentation, there was not a strong drop off of people. People were there to hear that part of the message because it was still highly relevant to them. So I think that reconsidering what is the way that you get those leads in the door and when you capture them to have those conversations is really important. And at Convince and Convert, what we are doing is during our webinars, we are asking a couple of key questions as you learn some of these concepts that allow us to identify people that our sales team should be speaking to. So in 2 weeks, we're going to be giving a conversation, a presentation about influencers for B2B businesses. And we're going to be joined by Neil Schaefer, whose new book is just out about influence. And the pitch that we're going to make towards the end is, if you want to have a brainstorm with one of our team members for 20 minutes about this topic of how you could use influencers here, just say yes in the chat. And then for all of the people who say yes in the chat, we can export that information and pass that on to our team so that we can start to have those one-on-one conversations and start prospecting more deeply. Those are people who've put their hands up and said, yeah, I want to have a conversation and talk about this a little more. So I think it's building in some of those specific calls to action directly into the content that you're doing. And again, being a little bit more thoughtful about what is the purpose of the digital experience that we're having.
Gotcha. Those are some good strategies for webinars, for the technology you're using. That was Jump on Board, or what was that called again?
Hopin.
Hopin. Sorry, that was completely wrong.
There was
Working
a
off
conference I was at with Hopin. It was really cool. The interesting part was you were able to ask to panelists. You were able to like kind of go off into like a separate room with like your own like conversations. If you want to like kind of leave the conversation, have a side conversation, then hop back into the main conference room. It was pretty interesting. So one of the questions is like, a lot of things are kind of pivoting to virtual and virtual events. What do you think doesn't resonate, or what do you think doesn't translate to virtual, like different types of conferences or events that would never make any sense to translate?
Or products?
I think you're definitely right that there are some things that we lose, right? There's not as much happenstance in the digital space. There's no kismet of, oh, I was chit-chatting with somebody in the line to buy my lunch, and it turns out they're in the same industry, right? We can't recreate that kind of connection in a lot of our digital events. But that is why I like these kinds of participatory events a lot, because there, where people are thinking in a more social, convivial, brainstorming sort of way. So again, on the B2B side, maybe you're creating a space where different, let's say, startup founders can connect with each other to discuss a topic. So it is just a general forum. We've put in sort of a compelling, crazy question, share your thoughts, right? There, people start expressing themselves, and then they might find somebody to have some of those side conversations with, as you were mentioning before. But I do think it is more difficult, and we will lose a little bit of that kind of connection in transitioning to digital. I don't think that there's going to be as many opportunities to make those random connections. And the other piece of it that I think we lose, but I think we have the opportunity to recreate, is referrals. So in a conference environment, when you're all physically in the same space, I might say to Ross, oh, hey, you know who you should really speak to is Brian, because he is in a really similar space, and I think that you guys would really hit it off. And I might just wave you over, right? We can't do that anymore. But we can be more deliberate as marketers, as communicators, as business founders, etc., to look for opportunities to introduce the people within our network and to ask our network, who could I introduce you to? And I think that when we put that out there, then people are more willing to do it for us as well. So I think that that's something that we're going to have to deliberately put into practice more frequently. But for instance, we are in the process of hiring interns for our summer season. And I tell them always, no matter what happens, whether or not you are hired, I think it's so important to network with us and let me know if there's someone that you want me to introduce you to for the future, because those are the connections that are going to pay it forward for the rest of your career. So I'm constantly thinking through how do we have those kinds of conversations
So bad at that.
with the people in our, but see, now that we've talked about it, right, it's something that you can recognize, and you could say, hey, I'm going to put that on my calendar like once a month, every 10th of the month, I'm going to just do a shout out.
Yeah, and vice versa. Like, ask anybody if they want any intros or give any intros. Like, because you're right, the kismet is missing now. Where that was the whole benefit of living in San Francisco is walking down the street and getting a coffee next to, the guy who founded Zynga. Like, I bumped into him on the street. I'm like, oh, you're the Zynga guy. Like, none of that is there anymore, right? Or seeing people that on the street. And as soon as that was gone, like, leaving the Bay Area like just made a ton of sense, because that's what it's there for. It's like all of those like-minded people bumping into each other.
I agree with that, and I disagree with it. Ooh. I think that since I left San Francisco, I've had more conversations with people that I know in San Francisco that I want to talk to than I did in person, because no one is like relying on the random happenstance, like I'm going to bump into each other. There's a lot of people in my LinkedIn that I'm friends with that are just saying, hey, when I have a 30-minute phone call here, there, and every phone call is, let me introduce you to these two other people. Do you want to take that phone call? And me wanting the social interaction, I say, sure, I'll take that phone call, even though I don't know that person, because I'm investing in the fact that at some point, someone's going to introduce me to someone I really want to know, and it's all just going to come tumbling back, which is great. With 6 minutes left, Zontee, we have 3 questions that we like to ask everyone. And I'm just going to ask them. You can answer them in any random order that you want. I know you've told a lot of stories, but it's time for one more amazing story and some other questions. So the first question is, of all of the conferences that you've seen, of all of the online events, what is the one online event that you thought would totally fail and succeeded, or you thought would succeed and totally fail? So flipping it. The second question is, with everything evolving so quickly, we've had online events forever, but people are learning so rapidly in COVID. Where do you go to stay ahead of the curve, to blogs, videos, etc., so that you can learn the newest tools, the newest strategies, etc.? And the third one is simply, where can people reach out to you if they want to learn more?
For sure. So where you can reach me is either zonteehou.com or mediavolery.com or convinceandconvert.com. You can go to any of our websites. My information's there. You can reach out directly through any of those sites, or you can follow me at Twitter, Zontee Hou, very easy. I try to just at Zontee, because I am at Zontee for Facebook and Pinterest, and also at NYU, which is where I went to undergrad, but some kid in Thailand already had it, and I was like, dude, come on.
Buy it.
Yeah, I might have to do that. But so Zontee Hou for Twitter and Instagram. Now, in terms of places to learn more in this industry, I'm going to start with convinceandconvert.com, because we have a great blog and tons of really expert people writing fantastic content. So honestly, I sometimes will do Google searches and end up reading our own content when I'm looking up specific cases. And then I would recommend Marketing Profs. Full disclosure, they are a client of ours, but Marketing Profs is a premier education website aimed specifically at marketers. They have a ton of online courses, downloads, resources, etc. That's super helpful. And then I would say that a lot of the SaaS companies within the digital marketing space actually create really great content. So our friends at CoSchedule have a really fantastic blog and put out a lot of really valuable stuff. And of course, the people at HubSpot do a great job too. So lots of good resources there. And then I'm going to come to your first question, which for me, I think was the most difficult, because I don't want to name any names in terms of conferences that did well or did not do well that should have done well per se. But I'll give you an example without naming names of where I think that we can go wrong. So I had an organization reach out to me. They wanted to put together this online series. Conceptually, the content itself was free. All you had to do was register, and then you would get access to basically 25 little mini courses from all of these different experts, me included. But I think the way in which they went to promote it was incorrect. First of all, they didn't make it really clear what was the one single thing you were going to learn from each of these different units. They were just saying like register for 25 things. And I think it's difficult for people to know vaguely, what are those 25 things? Am I going to get value out of any of those? So I think you have to be specific. The second thing that they didn't do well was that their graphics were not telling the compelling story. It was really focused on who the MC was, which wasn't really important, right? Because the really important thing was all of those individual experts. And they didn't create great graphics that focused on the thought leadership and the reputation and the trust in all of those individual thought leaders that they were actually working with. And then the third thing that I think they missed out on was really to go beyond the audiences of those people. They basically reached out to the audiences of, again, myself and a bunch of different experts and put it in front of them and then their own audience. But I think when you are creating a new event and you are trying to get that top of funnel, like more people exposed to your ideas, in this day and age, you must invest in paid social advertising, paid digital advertising, because that's the only way that you can get across to many different people within the community who are interested in your topic area, but who might not know any one of those individual people. So I think those were a couple of opportunities that they missed out on, and therefore I think it was not as successful as it could have been, even though the premise was good and the instinct was good.
This is awesome. It's such good insight. It's like, we actually came up with an idea. I mean, it's an old idea, but we were gonna like kind of recycle it and say, part of the idea about doing the panelists, which we would love to have you on in the future if we do a panel, is we post it on LinkedIn, we tag the people that are on the panel, and then that kind of creates that cycle, that viral cycle of each individual speaker and influencer bringing their own audience. But I think you're so right when you're describing this, is that it's all the other people that are kind of aligned in affinity, but they're not maybe in a first or second degree connection from you, and they would never touch your content without some sort of paid program. I also think that a really key point that you touched on, I thought it was super innovative around the Uber Eats idea, like having like eating over Uber Eats. I want to join one of those, or maybe we'll throw one of those, Ross, because that's pretty cool. And this was like a lot of great content, and so I wanted to thank you for your time. This has been great.
Yeah,
Likewise, I just wanted to add to that. I think it's really cool what you said last. Seems like the masterclass approach. If you look at any of their content, they highlight every speaker, they use social ads, and it's kind of why they're exploding, which is kind of a case study for why you should use the exact strategy that you said. I don't know if masterclass is the no-name person you were talking about.
It is not. I know their co-founder very well, and it is not. They do a great job. I would never denigrate their work.
Okay, then let's totally name drop them right here. And that sounds like exactly what you're promoting. So people should try that.
Be masterclass. Be masterclass.
Exactly. Zontee, thank you so much for coming on the show. As Brian said, we'd love to have you in the future. And thank you everyone for attending and asking great questions on this episode of Masters of Marketing. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.